Idly-ho there. It's me again. I haven't been putting out a lot of videos lately. A lot of reasons for that. Life is kind of complicated at times, and that sort of diminishes your ability to work on such things. But I thought I had some fodder to talk about, and I would use it here instead of like writing a blog post or writing on social media about it. I yesterday did a lot of gaming. I went to the local game store and volunteered to run a demo of Dungeons and Dragons for new players. Now, this is different than running a game for your buddies that, you know, have been playing D&D a long time. It's different from a convention game, both of which I've done plenty of times. This is a thing where you have to keep in mind the people playing often don't know that much about D&D. So, I had a good session. I was running at a store in my local area in Oak Ridge, Tennessee called Turn 1 Gaming. Great little store. And I had 6 players, which, you know, I had 6 characters. 2 of the players were clearly more experienced with D&D. They had either played previous versions or had actually played 5e. They were there in support of the other people. I had 2 little girls, daughters of one of the other players. I think one was 11 and the other one was 9. And I had a guy I played Magic with who was just always curious about D&D. And a girl who I had just met her that day. And she was like, she and her friend came in and he was like, you know, do you still have space? And some of the people who said they were going to show up hadn't shown up, so I still had space. So we had this game together. I use pre-generated characters. If you're going to introduce D&D, first give people the gameplay. And if they like the gameplay, then you can go back and you're like, okay, well, this is how you create your own character. But if they don't know why they're going through the effort of making a character, then they sort of miss out what's kind of awesome about D&D in the first place. So, at least that was my thinking. Other people may have different philosophies on this. This was my thinking. Anyways, the session went well. I ran a fairly straightforward adventure. The heroes get a mission from the king of a small kingdom in the Forgotten Realms. The Sword Coast has a lot of undefined areas where there are a bunch of little would-be kingdoms in the region. I sort of took advantage of that and set up a kingdom called Windward. And it's, you know, in the middle of the Sword Coast region, that region of Faerun. And the king of this country lost a powerful item, sent the heroes off into the hinterlands to go track down one of his suspicions as to where it went. And that was the setup. They ended up getting to do some role-play encounters at a local tavern. They gained information at the tavern. They went to the keep of the bad guy and found that he was using kobolds. And kobolds make good villains for starting out an intro. One, because they're relatively crunchy. They're pretty easy to kill at low levels. And they use traps. So you get 2 different levels of what's going on. You have a chance for players to learn about how traps work and interacting with traps, and they get to, you know, face some bad guys that are relatively unambiguously bad. Kobolds can be good guys. I certainly have run games with good guy kobolds, but the having a horde of small creatures that want to kill them that aren't particularly hard to kill themselves gives them each of the players a chance to use their combat abilities and learn how the combat works and see a result relatively quickly. So that's why I use kobolds. They make it to the keep. They get into the keep. They fight something there. They go in further into the keep. There are traps, including a gelatinous cube, which was in a room, and the solution of the PCs were like, oh, well, that's not good. And they closed the door to the room and left the gelatinous cube alone. They just, oh, nope, we're not going in there. Which I thought was a good solution. And then they go and face the big bad guy who was commanding all of these kobolds. And they had a good hard fight. Half the party is down on the ground at the end, which is kind of where you want to be with a boss fight. You want it to be a close, tight fight. If it's an easy fight, the boss doesn't feel like enough of a threat. It doesn't feel like you've really achieved something. So you want it to be a nice, close fight. Anyways, that was my thinking while I was going through it. And it was nice. It was nice running for new people. It was nice running for kids. I try and indulge their impulses. So at one point, one of them was like, okay, well, I'm going to make this one of the remaining kobolds my pet. That's how she put it. Basically, she wanted a follower. And I let her make some skill checks, and she succeeded at the skill checks. So she has a kobold follower. It was a one-shot. Why not? Sure. Yeah, you convince him to follow you. And that's indulging the player's impulse, and saying yes is more important than saying no in D&D, and any role-playing game, really. Giving the chance for players to say, I want to do this. Can I do this? And you say yes, makes them more invested in what they're doing, and gives them a better idea of what they can get away with. As long as you frame it in a rules context. Can I do this? Well, yeah, sure. You just need to do this roll, or this roll, and describe how you're doing that, things like that. So, it was a success. Then, I came home, fed the animals, and jumped into a game where I was playing with a friend, Francois, who runs a YouTube channel of his own. I'll put that in the show notes, a link to actually the episode in question. He uses a setting book to run different games in the setting, and then he randomly picks what section of the setting, and then he randomly picks what system he's going to use for each of his sessions, which is an interesting experiment. I like it. We got to play a game that was Heroes Against the Darkness, which is a rule set I had not really encountered before this game. And it is sort of OSR-ish. It's not really OSR, and it's not really D&D, but it's sort of close. Like, it's similar stats, you get health, you got hit points, you're rolling a d20, but it also has some of its own internal variation. You can have traits that are descriptions of your character, and if you are in a situation where you can apply that trait, you get a bonus to your roll. Things like cautious, or astute, or what have you. Because I'm astute, I'm going to be able to better observe the guy we're tracking, that kind of thing. And then like, okay, well, you get a +2 to your roll because you can use this, which is nice. And a lot of the abilities boil down to you gain the roll to hit is harder, but you gain an extra effect, like you can impose a penalty on the target. And as you level up, you roll more of the weapon die. So, I'm firing a bow. The level 3 version of this ability means I roll 2d8 instead of 1d8. Pretty straightforward otherwise. It's pretty light rules-wise. And yeah, it was a fun game. It was a nice bunch of guys. I was super low energy coming into it because I had just gotten through running a game all day. So I ended up playing the most mellow Tartarin, which are kind of like tieflings, except that they're certain that they are assured that when they die, they go back to hell. So they really don't like dying. No, I don't want to go. So I definitely played them as very laid back and what have you. But it was a fun game, and it was a good way to cap off my day. Ran pretty late, but it was a good way to cap off the day. I had ran a game and I played a game. It's like being at a convention, really. And that was my day yesterday. A lot of gaming, and it made me happy. Anyway, I will wrap this up. I hope everyone is well and life is treating you well. And I will try and be better about checking in more often. You have a good day. See ya.